What happens when extraordinary expertise remains one of the best kept secrets in an industry? In an increasingly crowded marketplace, actively leveraging and demonstrating high-level expertise can tend to build immediate credibility with strategic partners, investors, consumers, and ordinary stakeholders. However, expertise alone isn't clearly enough. The challenge is transforming knowledge, experience, and an idea into a brand people recognize, trust, and remember. In this episode of Let's Have This Conversation, I sit down with my friend Carey James. He's the founder of alchemy.io. He's a personal branding strategist, storyteller, and self-described Ph.D. dropout who's made it his mission to amplify some of the world's brightest minds. His philosophy is simple but memorable. He says he gives superheroes capes before entering the world of personal branding and thought leadership. Carey worked as a research coordinator in a clinical neuroscience lab in Los Angeles, exploring how trust develops and how stories influence identity and why people choose to follow certain voices. That scientific foundation helped to shape a powerful conclusion which continues to shape his work today. Human beings are wired for connection and not simply information. And this distinction matters a great deal in a world increasingly influenced by artificial intelligence, automation, algorithms, endless content creation. The hypothesis is that the strongest personal brands aren't necessarily the loudest. They're the brands capable of making people feel understood, valued, and connected. Carey has taken those insights from the neuroscience lab into the business world, helping translate expertise into memorable influence and commercial impact. His work has contributed to more than $30 million in direct client sales, more than 70,000 speaking engagements, and more than $100,000 in consulting deals. And not to be forgotten is his best-selling book launches across more than 20 countries as the founder of alchemy.io. James works with founders, authors, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and public speakers to transform their expertise into influence by utilizing brand strategy, neuroscience, psychology, storytelling, and human connection. He describes the approach as evolutionary branding, a modern application of one of humanity's oldest and most powerful abilities, that of storytelling. And James joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how you help industry experts become experts in their field. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Love it. Excited to be here. Excited to talk with you, get some questions answered, and see what kind of value we can give to the audience.
Absolutely, my friend. And just before we dive into how you help people become industry experts, Carey, I'm curious to start our conversation by asking you about your background, because I know your background is in research and science and everything in between, my friend. So give me a 360-degree view of who you are and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Yeah, totally. So my journey started out originally, I came from a farm in Kansas, grew up there, pretty like low income, kind of rough around the edges sort of place, a lot of trailer parks, things like that. And one day, a librarian saw me skipping class. I was in the library skipping class, and she told me that you're meant for bigger things. Stop getting in trouble. Stop skipping class. Stop getting, in trouble with the law, all that. And she told me there's a much bigger world out there, and that you are the type of person, you're ambitious, you're motivated, you do bigger things. Go do bigger things out in the world. At that point in my life, I never knew that was possible. I never realized that I could do bigger things. And because of this outside perspective, she gave me information that I didn't have about myself. That led me to Hollywood when I was 17 years old, moved out there, worked in TV and film. From the world of Hollywood, I switched into the world of research and science, where I worked in a research clinic for several years pursuing a Ph.D. That led me to the world of business, which, ended up working with a lot of doctors, scientists, all these different initiatives, expanding out into a number of different sales roles, business development roles, and various leadership positions. Um, that led me to the world of branding, working with founders, helping them figure out how to sell what they sell and make their brands more clear, understood, etc. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, I'm also curious to ask you about how your background as a researcher helps you be a better brand identity expert, and how that background helps your clients really stand out into the field. What are your thoughts on that, my friend?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what a research background, those experiences in the lab, learning how to code statistical software, learning how to build a lot of fun spreadsheets, interview, study participants, all that. I would say biggest takeaway was interviewing a lot of people, getting a lot of information, like grilling down into client experience about, you know, um, what did you experience when you did this kind of protocol? Tell me about the qualitative, information. Tell me about the quantitative. Tell me about the statistics behind that. So it's like where qualitative meets quantitative, that's really helpful when you're working with branding clients, really understanding and digging deep into their story, their background. I also like throughout when I was pursuing a PhD, I was working, in research. I was also I was doing facilitating group therapy. I was facilitating groups. I was doing even some one-on-one sessions with clients, and just that whole world of psychology helped me to better understand the individual that might not be as willing or able to open up about who they are and what makes them special, their value, their uniqueness in the world. So, yeah, I mean, it's super valuable. Research at the end of the day, it's figuring like finding answers. Sales at the end of the day is finding answers. So
Yeah, absolutely. And at the heart of your branding company, you have one motto: if you're one of the best kept secrets, it's a problem, my friend. So tell me about brandalchemy.io, my friend, how it works, and why you believe it's making a difference in the world, my friend.
yeah, totally. So essentially, I'll zoom out and just tell you a bit about, it's like the world at large right now. Everybody's scared about the big bad AI monster, and they're scared for good reason. And that's because, I mean, we're already seeing it right now. A lot of people don't have work. They're struggling to go out and like land a job and essentially what that is convince people of their value as an employee. of their value as an owner of a company, et cetera, et cetera. So in 5 years from now, that's going to be 10 times worse. And I'm not like the doomsayer. I'm not the doom and gloom kind of guy. But what that means is like when you understand that and you accept that, it's a very powerful place to be. So you look at 5 years in the future, and what you see is that talent, skill set, competence in general is no longer valuable. It can be replicated. Competence in a subject area, a resume a mile long, is no longer valuable. It doesn't matter what you've done or where you've worked, what logos you have attached to your name. Robots can do it. You could take Claude, you could take an AI program and just go have it copy somebody else's business overnight. So then what becomes your competitive advantage? What becomes, the thing that sets you apart from the masses? And what you're left with is your humanity. It's your humanity, the three-dimensional being that is you. And what does that mean? That means like your you-isms. What makes you weird? What makes your specific opinions on specific topics that is in your area of expertise? Your stories. Human beings think in stories. So what stories do you have to share that's going to help somebody get the point across and make a sale easier? And when you really drill down into all of that, a lot of times what people struggle with to be able to get to that level, figure out who they are, their identity, is they run into what I call the label in the bottle syndrome. And label in the bottle, that's essentially when you're inside the bottle, you can't see the label from the outside. So you're blind to your own genius. And this is not a character flaw. It's not, lack of competence. It's not lack of self-awareness. It's a human nature thing. Everybody experiences this. They're blind to their own genius. They're blind to their own strengths, weaknesses, etc. And it's because they don't have the luxury of sitting outside of themselves. Other people sit outside of you. They experience you from the outside every day. It's an architecture issue, essentially. What we do at Brand Alchemy is we sit outside the bottle and we figure out what it is, give you the definitions, actually capture that magic, whatever it happens to be. And then we build that into strategy and we go out there and make it a really powerful brand in the marketplace that gets followers, that gets, clients, that gets sales, that gets revenue, et cetera. And it's the individual personal brand that matters the most. A lot of the time, people think their company brand is their most valuable asset. I completely disagree. A personal brand, if it's attached to a company here and there, the personal brand lasts forever. You can go from this company to that company. You can close this company, start another one. What still is at the end of the day going to be important to your audience, which your audience is full of humans, is your humanity. So that's what we do at Brand Alchemy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Carey, one of the questions I had for you too, buddy, is I'm curious, because a lot of industry experts have great ideas, but they don't have the ability to sort of narrow it down into, acceptable pieces of bite-sizable information from a branding perspective. So how do you turn an idea and information that you have into your head into a brand? I'm curious to get your thoughts there, my friend.
So essentially, it's like how do you turn what's in your head into the brand externally, so it's communicated to the world? How do you get that out of you?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and it's like how do you get what's inside the bottle outside the bottle? Essentially, what you do. We're told, from being a kid all the way as an adult, we're told that if you want to know who you are, your identity, then you need to go meditate on a mountaintop. You need to go look inwards. You need to self-reflect. That's where all the answers will be. I actually think it's the opposite. Identity is not something you discover. Identity is not something that you're given, somebody's hands to you. And it's not something you find by looking inside. Identity is a verb. Brand is a verb. It's something you do by engaging with other human beings around you. When you get these like I told you the story about the librarian, it's like these are the reflections that the universe reflects back to you and says, you're really good at this because that person just told you you're really good at this, because they just told you changed their life by doing X, Y, and Z. So how do you pull it out of you? Go talk to the people around you. I have a framework. It's called the external mirror method. And essentially what you do is you go to the first step. There's 3 steps. The first step is collect. So stop introspecting and you actually go interview 10 people that you work with already or that you know already. What you want to do, you can do this anonymized. You could send them like a Google form with 20 questions on it, or you can actually interview them directly. But one of the main things you want to ask is what as the person, it's like, what did you understand about yourself that or after working with me that you didn't understand before? You're not asking the person what they liked. You're asking what shifted in them, what transformation they had as a result of working with you or knowing you. Or, this could be your best friend. This could be an employee. It could be, a senior person in your organization. But what you're looking for is outside perspective from people that have that luxury of experiencing you over time. Super valuable information that you can get from people. So pulling it out, go ask the people. It's already there. It's already existing in your life around you all day, every day with these people. They have the answers. Go talk to them and get the answers. So step one is collect. That's the most important one. Your outcome of step one is once you collect this information, you're going to have language that you could not have written about yourself. This is like stuff where you're like, oh, wow, I looked at that. They said this thing and I'm really surprised by that. That's, I could not have made, this is not a bio for LinkedIn. This is a brand and they tell you what your brand is. Step two is after you got, your 10 people, maybe 20 people that you interview, you start to look for patterns and signal. This is what I call compress stage two. So you look for the answers that keep popping up more and more and more. Look for like three or four of these pieces that they keep saying that you really excel at this. You changed my life in this way. If you just hear one thing one time, it's noise. Doesn't matter how flattering it is. If it's just one time you hear it, that's noise. What you're looking for is a signal, the repetition. And then as an outcome from that stage, once you condense it down to like 3 or 4 areas, then you have a position that nobody can copy. Nobody else in the world is going to be this. It's what I call your niche of one is the result of that. So you have your niche of one because you've actually determined it from specific clients, people you work with, people that know you the best. Last stage is convert. And when you convert, you're essentially going to install that sentence, that DNA, the things you specialize in the most. You install that in 3 specific places. One is your offer. Your offer to the world, whatever you're selling, that needs to be, you need to include your brand in that, your brand promise, your brand DNA. 2 is in the first 60 seconds of every sales conversation that you have. People need to know about who you are, why should I trust you, why you are my vibe, that kind of thing. And then the last one is any room that your bio goes into before you. So if you're being on a podcast, for example, if you're going to go give a speech, or if you're being invited into a business deal and a conversation, they should know who you are, where they need to know information about you before you get into the room. This is the kind of thing where they know who you are, that brand DNA. So then you can price yourself correctly in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carey, I'm also curious to ask you about the power of human connection because, Carey, in my office, there's a sign that says we're only as valuable as leaders as the amount of power that we empower our people with. So I'm curious to ask you about the importance of human connection when it comes to organizational culture. And I know you also help companies conduct business and productivity audits. So I'm curious to ask you about the importance of human connection. And when we're talking about those questions that organizations should ask themselves when it comes to productivity and a human connection audit, what sort of questions do you think executives should be asking themselves?
Yeah, in regards to productivity and human connection, so I look at it as like, so I've did a lot of sales throughout my career. I've been, depending on how you count it, I stopped counting a long time ago. I've probably been on 4,000 plus sales calls since I started in this world. And throughout that time, I've noticed patterns. And one of the biggest patterns I've noticed is that if you do branding the right way, if people know who you are, know what you, even if it's your sales representative and they know who the founder is of the company that they are representing, if they know the values behind the organization, they know the human, the face behind the organization, and they know that that person is of a higher status, value aligned, part of your tribe, 90% of the sales call is won before the call even starts. So when you talk about productivity and the power of human connection, so if you have developed your brand and you know who you are, you know what your values are, you know all these different things, you can do less because the human element of the equation is solved. And a lot of times people ignore the human elements in business equations, in operations, in employer branding. If you're looking at a company, you're looking at their employer brand, you're trying to headhunt some of the best talent in the world. If they know the founder is amazing and they know the brand of the founder, they're going to be more likely to work with them. So productivity, it all comes down to, what are you being productive about? Is it spreadsheets? Is it, logos and graphic design? Is it sales numbers? Is it marketing campaigns? Those are really interesting things and important things to be productive in. But it's like, how is your humanness coming out? How is that coming out? Because once you could figure out the human side of your business, things get a lot more fluid. Decisions get made a lot faster. People say yes easier. Employees jump on board and they're more productive and they're more motivated when you figure out the human elements.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we talk about your research background, I know that you research things on how a story shape identities and why people react to certain emotions and different human interactions. So I'm curious, as always a journalist, Carey, I'm curious to ask you, how do you think storytelling and the power of having the ability to tell a great story helps to shape the identity that you want to put out into the world and to the marketplace? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, 1,000%. So I think so. A lot of my work and my theories and my crazy ideas that I share with the world, a lot of it rests upon the field of evolutionary psychology or tribal psychology, some people call it. And this area, it's basically focused on studying what life was like in our evolutionary environments. Let's say 200,000 years ago. The humans that we are today, they came about around 200 to 300,000 years ago, depending on how you count it. Throughout that entire time in our history, for the vast majority of it, we've lived in small tribes of about 100 to 200 people. That's where Dunbar's number comes from, if you're familiar with that. So in these tribes, we essentially, we grew up knowing each other, the same people our entire life. We had areas of expertise. We had, like if you were a hut builder or if you were a hunter or if you were a medicine woman or what have you, you developed expertise and reputation throughout your lifetime. You also had your personal brand. Personal brand is not new. This thing has been around for thousands of years, way before business was a thing. So going back to it, essentially what we're looking at is a world where we live today, that is built upon the world that existed yesterday. And yesterday we lived in stories. We didn't have paper. We didn't have computers. We didn't have books even. We told each other stories around a campfire. We told each other a story about the hunt and how Jim the hunter stepped up and was brave and he, got the mammoth. And then we talked about how, Megan, the medicine woman, saved that kid's life because she knew the exact herb that was going to save that kid's life. So the reason I get into this is because it's like all of that back then, like that's how we operate today. That's the software that we're operating on today. We like to think we're robots and we like to think this is all there is, the computer, et cetera, but it's all a human game still. Stories are a currency, and it's because that's how we evolved in our environments. So storytelling today, absolutely crucial if you want to make money. If you can't tell a story, you can't speak the language of humans. You can ask anybody today, it's like you give them two books. One book is full of technical details. They're going to fall asleep. The other book is a story that still explains the same technical concepts, but through story lens, they're going to digest that information. If you want to go into the world of neuroscience, it's like it actually, it starts to scaffold is what happens. Information gets scaffolded through stories on the brain rather than just crunching information directly because we're not robots.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I carry in today's digital age. I'm curious to ask you this question because you said that our brains are wired for connection and simply not information. So I'm curious to ask you about in today's, what I call our instant coffee sort of society. Where is the importance of still slowing down and really connecting with people in today's instant coffee society? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, slowing down and connecting with people. I mean, it's like I always like to play in parallels. So it's like I'll tell you the opposite of what that looks like. And what that looks like is trying to talk to a million people at once, billions of people on the internet. You know, a lot of times when people go create content, for example, they get really nervous and they freak out because they think it's me talking to millions. And they're like, well, what do I say? I don't know what to say to a million people. It's a million different people. What do I say? I get confused. I get nervous, all these different things. One of the best strategy for making great content, the best content creators, they don't speak to millions. They speak to one person. They speak to one person in the audience. When they get deep in their storytelling, et cetera, they speak to this one individual. And because of that, millions of people feel that as a one-to-one experience. The reason I say that is because slowing down and connecting with a human one to one is the best skill set to have if you're trying to speak to millions. Does that make sense? Like, if you want to speak to the
Yeah,
masses, first you must master speaking one to one so that a million people feel connected to you on a one to one level.
absolutely. And my friend, I'm also curious to ask you about the importance of resilience and overcoming adversity when building brands, because no matter how tight of a message you have as a business person or an entrepreneur, uh, resilience, I always say, is the answer to the test once adversity strikes. So I'm curious about asking you about your view on the importance of resilience for organizational culture and overall identity brand building. What are your thoughts on the importance of resilience, my friend?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's a lot of really fascinating research coming out in the world of resilience right now. Sometimes people they frame it as anti-fragility, fragility. There's a really one of my friends, he hosts the Anti-Fragility podcast, amazing show. A lot of people are trying to figure out, how to be more resilient in this day and age where we're all caught up in a grinder and, just machine of business and internet and swiping and all this. And they're like, how do I survive all this? How do I not get burnt out when burnout is the norm? The way I look at that from a personal perspective, going to tie in some of the research involved, but it's like resiliency it's a matter of motivation. It's like if you're not motivated, you're not going to be resilient to get through the next day's work, to keep going, to keep going. So the two easiest ways to outsource motivation, is what I like to call it, is pick a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a really scary thing, something that's on the horizon that is almost impossible. But if you have that on the horizon, you always have something to aim for. You have a purpose, a direction you're going into. If you've ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a lot of people they quote this book all the time because this guy lived in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany, and he came out the other side completely sane, having experienced and been through all these challenges, etc. His resilience was off the charts, and it's because he wanted to publish his work. He wanted to publish that book. So for him, it was simple. He had the goal on the calendar. He had the goal in mind. He just kept reconnecting to that purpose, that purpose, that purpose, and then the smaller things didn't seem like such big things in the grand scheme of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carey, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on how you believe that leadership and growth mindset are interconnected because when you're an executive leader or an entrepreneur, whether you're leading a group of people inside an organization or trying to convince customers to buy something, your ability to communicate from a leadership perspective is vital. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the evolution of leadership and growth mindset and how you view that concept, my friend.
Yeah, like the evolution of growth mindset in leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, the best leaders are their servants. They're servant leaders. And, when they think they have it all figured out and they're at the top of the organization, the pyramid, whatever it happens to be, that's when they usually start failing. That's when you start seeing the weaknesses, et cetera. But if they come from a service mindset, it's like, I'm just here to serve my organization. I'm here to help everybody get, the best out of themselves to reach their highest potential. What you find is there's no limit to the growth that's possible because it's always coming with a beginner's mindset. It's always coming with, okay, well, maybe I've grown in different ways, but has this employee or has this client? How can I help them? How can I go further? And you, as a result, you keep growing with them. And I think that's what's really important. Is it's just a matter of like, beginner's mindset and just having a service mindset. You're going to keep growing.
Yeah,
Growth mindset is a natural occurrence after that.
yeah, absolutely. And, Claire, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on psychological safety and the importance of that within organizations because, it's my belief that you can only maximize the productivity of people inside an organizational culture if they're psychologically safe. So I'm curious about your thoughts on, the relationship between psychological safety, whether you think there is a correlation with our brains in terms of the neuroscience of our brains, and how that contributes to a thriving organizational culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I actually love this topic. I mean, I can go back into your evolutionary environment. It's like, yeah, if you were getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you probably weren't going to be very creative, or you probably weren't going to be very good at, doing your job that day, your tasks, your to-do list, if you were getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So obviously, if you translate that in today's world, if people don't feel safe, if they feel like there's, like if there's a risk towards them, what they're doing, their thoughts, their ideas, like they're being, at risk of being attacked anyway, you can't get the best work out of them. Besides the moral imperative, obviously, morally, you just don't want to be mean to people, but you just don't get the best work out of them either. So you're not going to make as much money if everybody's feeling not safe in the environment. However, I want to challenge the definition. Some people think safety and a risk of failure can be similar. I think, and this, you go into flow research, like the research of flow states, and when people do their best thinking, their best creativity, their best, output, their most productivity, one of the triggers for a flow state is actually a risk of failure, a slight risk of failure. And protecting your team, protecting your people from failure, that's not what you want. You actually want them to have a little bit of risk of failure because that means they're growing. It's like a video game. If you won every level on a video game on the first try, then the video game is going to be boring. You're not going to be trying. You're not going to be developing and growing as a result. So psychological safety, important, but it's also, you want to be careful not to remove risk from somebody's role. You want to make sure that they're actually pushing the boundaries of their capabilities, or else they're going to get bored and quit, is what's going to happen.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point that leads to my next question. Carey, as you know, I have cerebral palsy and I work with organizations to amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities. And if you look at the national American numbers, Carey, only about a quarter of people with disabilities are employed today on a regular basis compared to about 68% of their non-disabled counterparts. So I'm curious to ask you about what do you think organizations are missing the mark when they don't diversify their workforce? And what sort of competitive advantage do you think individuals with disabilities can offer a workforce? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I have a few. I mean, it's like I love these kinds of questions because honestly, Kevin, it's like I don't experience disability. I'm a straight white male that comes from the United States, and we're probably the most privileged bunch in the United States. I like this kind of question though because I look at it as a matter of, like, realistically, you look at business people. A lot of times they're stressed out and they're like, well, how do I get the best out of my organization? I think that the specific perspectives that somebody with a disability has can bring different ways of thinking. They've had very different lives than a lot of people without disability, so they bring a different angle to certain scenarios and certain situations that a lot of other people don't have. So I look at it from creativity. Diversity creates creativity. Second one is I know a lot of people that they've never had a challenge in their life. They've never had a challenge before, even if, and disability aside, they haven't experienced a lot of challenges. Usually those people aren't very good at what they do because they don't know what it's like to try and fail and try and fail and do something again and get better and believe in yourself, that kind of thing. I know a lot of people with disabilities, they have tried, they work so incredibly hard. They have character development. They've done things other people could not imagine doing, and they continue to do it. And a lot of times they do it with a smile on their face. That's the kind of people I want to work with personally. That's my own personal opinion. I want to work with people that have experienced challenges and have overcame challenges and know who they are in those moments. They know they've met that person, that internal person that says, no, you can't do it. And you say, yes, I can. That's kind of people I want to build things with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Carey, I'm also curious to ask you about turning expertise into influence, because I asked you about information into influence earlier, but if people have, expertise, but they don't know how to communicate, then their influence is limited. And I know that you've helped both thought leaders, authors, podcasters, and speakers and other entrepreneurs turn expertise into influence. So what do you think is the roadmap to doing that successfully? Because I know you use the power of psychology and storytelling to do that. So tell me about expertise into influence, my friend.
Yeah, turning expertise into influence, it's really simple. At the end of the day, it's not the loudest that wins. It's not the smartest that wins. It's the ones that are the best at communicating their value to the world, communicating their ideas, the clearest ones, the ones that are clearest communicators. What does that mean for an individual that has 20 plus years of experience and a resume that's a mile long? It's great to get a job, to be an employee, to, maybe land a role here and there. But if you want to change the world and you want to have an impact, you want to go out and make money, you have to be much better at effectively communicating what that background actually means. Does that make sense? So essentially it's like turning expertise into influence, storytelling, plus being very clear about your story, about your background, about your experiences. Simple as that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carey, I also wanted to ask you about the importance of strategic planning, because our friends over at Forbes say that about 2/3 of new entrepreneurs struggle with strategic planning and coming up with a cohesive storyline in order to build the brand, my friend. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the importance of strategic planning and really having a clear and identifiable vision of building a brand and sort of getting your expertise out into the masses. What are your thoughts on the importance of, strategic planning, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep it simple. Usually the best strategy is the simplest strategy. And like we said, if you're especially working with other human beings, it needs to be clear. People that make big strategies and plans that are a mile long and complex and all that, usually that falls on deaf ears. So the simpler the strategy is to understand for the parties involved, the more effective that strategy is going to be. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Carey, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on how you define the whole concept of effective sort of strategic creativity. And what I mean by that is a lot of people have great ideas, but they don't know how to strategically use their creativity to their advantage. So, what's your definition of the concept of strategic and effective creativity? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, well, I think creativity is a lot of people think it's just this elusive thing that, is the universe speaking through you, whatever it happens to be. Creativity is when you become so good at something that you don't, it just happens naturally without you having to think about it. Like creativity is something that happens through repetition, doing things over and over so well, putting in the reps. Then you know the rules and you know how to break the rules like an artist, essentially. And I think that a lot of people, they say, I'm not a creative person. Then I like to ask them, it's like, well, what have you gone deep on? what subject area do you know the best, where you know the rules and you know how to break the rules like an artist, because that's what creativity is. You look at the best musical artists, they're not the people creating the same song, but they know how to read music. They know different instruments. They know how to play all the same, beginner songs that other people play. And then they go out and they break the rules. That's what creativity is all about. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of those two questions is this, my friend. You've often said that, even in today's digital or AI world, that sales are human to human. And in today's AI-driven world, as a lot of people are using it to strategically take over a human task. But I'm curious, as we round out our conversation, to ask you about the how human to human connection styles can still exist in the world of AI, and how can we use AI, in your opinion, to enhance our human to human connection? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
yeah, 100%. What it comes back to, and if you ask any AI engineer, they'll tell you this exactly. It's garbage in, garbage out. And what that means is, like, if you put a bunch of bad data into an AI, it's going to output a exponentially more, or like an exponentially more amount of a higher amount of bad data. Just like if you have a personal brand that's human and the personal brand is not well thought out, you don't understand your superpowers, you don't understand your strengths, weaknesses, you haven't done the work to determine what your brand is, and then you go to try to amplify that brand with AI, it's just going to be more nonsense. But if you do the upfront work, gold in, gold out, you determine what is the gold in you, what is the most valuable thing you can offer the world, what is the message only you can deliver to the world, and you really hone that in, and then you amplify it with AI, then that's incredibly powerful. But it's just any AI developer would tell you it's garbage in, garbage out. You got to have the right inputs to get the right outputs.
Yeah, and I know you're coming to me today from Mexico, so I'm going to end our conversation this way. I'm someone who believes that we're all given a life compass, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of put our fingerprints of difference into the sand and hope that we make a measurable difference in the world. And the way we do that is by conviction and really believing in the vision that we have for our lives. So I'd be curious, when you define your own personal or professional vision for the sort of legacy that you want to leave in the world, how do you envision that vision or legacy being defined in your view, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, totally. So my personal, my life mission, it's also my company mission, is giving superheroes capes. I meet superheroes and I give them capes. I get them off the ground and into the sky, saving lives, doing what they do. Um, and at the end of the day, I don't know how much of an effect that's going to have in the world, but I also really enjoy doing it. It's like I like figuring out, helping other people determine what their highest potential version of themselves is, and then transforming into that highest potential version of them. That's what I do. I've done it ever since I was young. It's by nature. It just comes second nature to me. Um, and yeah, that's like my legacy. Ideally, is going to be a lot of people saying that I helped change their lives for the better and help them reach their highest potential. And I think that applies in business and money and revenue and all these different areas as well.
Yeah, and just because I'm curious, I'm going to follow up with one final question. With all of your brand identity building, Carey, I'm curious, when you look at our societal identity today, how do you think we can rebuild that brand identity so that we can come to a place of uh, not unity, but better sense of cohesion in terms of solving problems and coming up with natural solutions to problems through human to human connection. So essentially, what I'm asking is, how do you think we can rebuild our brand identity and sort of expertise when it comes to the art of conversation and coming up with solutions to problems. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I would say more be more human by getting out into the world, less screens, less little ticky-tacky boxes in apartments, and more out engaging with people directly. The more we know about each other, the more human we become, and the better decisions we make. I know for a fact that a lot of people they're so divided because they live behind screens every day, all day. When if they just went out and talked to their fellow person, they would realize that we're not so different. That we actually have a lot more in common than we have, different between us. So yeah, I would say, and then what's going to happen as a result, and this is it's a health thing at the end of the day, is your mental health becomes better. Your identity is a verb. It's not what you say you are. It's what the people around you experience you as. So then, by getting out into the world and engaging with your fellow man, it's getting involved in your community, starting a business, working with people, that kind of thing. Then you learn more about who you are in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, tell me finally, if people want to get connected with your personally or brand, alchemy.io, or what's the best way they can do that? And then finally, my friend, I know that you have a sense of adventure, my friend. So tell me, where does your sense of adventure come from? And what for you? What's the best part about living life, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
Yeah, so if you guys want to get in touch, brandalchemy.io is my company, and you could find me on all socials at Carey James Official, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Sense of adventure, I would say growing up on a farm in Kansas for all of my youth led me to really want to see the rest of the world. So now that's what I'm doing.
Well, we only live once, so we might as well maximize the moment, right, my friend?
hmm That's right.
Absolutely. Well, Carrie, we've covered a lot of ground, and I want to thank you for your ability to help people build the brand identities that really make their expertise stand out in the world, my friend. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank you for being here and engaging in conversation. It's most appreciated, my friend.
It was a great time. Looking forward to catching up again. Appreciate it, Kevin.